Yeah. Thank you for attending this evening. My research was on mindfulness and technology. And I was doing a comparison with the digital kind of lives of practitioners and non-practitioners. So to go about this, I suppose, looking at my personal life to start with. I'm based around technology. So I'd worked in technology for 20 years in both a corporate and educational space. And I'd been teaching mindfulness for 10 years as well, and was brought up in a very contemplative family. So I've had meditation around me most of my life. And what I found myself was that I felt my digital engagement was very different from my friends' digital engagements. And that got me thinking, is this down to my practice? What kind of variables are shaping this, which set the mindfulness kind of question? So, yep, the question being, do mindfulness practitioners show different online practices to non-practitioners? So, yeah, I think I've covered that slide already. So, yeah, my background, the reason, and the real aim of the research was to notice the patterns between the two. So the methodology, I took a constructivist, interpretivist approach to my research. And this was really because I wanted to find out the lived experience of the practitioners. I wanted to know how they interacted within the online environment. And I wanted to know how it made them feel, what arose for them when they were online. But obviously I was looking at non-practitioners as well. So there were certain questions that were delivered to the practitioner group and certain questions that were delivered to the whole cohort. So it was a mixed methods piece of research. The research started with a survey, and I had 134 participants take part. That was 75 mindfulness practitioners and 68 non-practitioners. So it was a very kind of even split. I think it's like 52-48. So, and the questions within the survey were very much from a quantitative perspective. I was really looking to, compare percentages. So I was asking people what devices they had. Do you have an iPad, an iPhone, a laptop, a smart device, an Android device? Looking for kind of device ownership. I was looking at whether people felt happy online. Do you feel like you're comfortable within the online environment? Do you feel like IT comes naturally to you? Do you use IT for work? So many kind of variables around the digital experience. From that, I was also looking at usage such as social media, entertainment. So questions were asked, do you use YouTube? What might you use YouTube for? Do you use social media? Please select the platforms that you might use. So all this was chosen to actually pick a story, so I could actually find a narrative in which both group of participants were doing. So from the survey, I went on to doing interviews. And I think this, in hindsight, I had 3 interviews, one with a mindfulness practitioner, one with a non-practitioner, and one with a Buddhist. So I was looking at it from both angles of mindfulness practice and then obviously a person without a practice. 3 interviews wasn't really enough. There was the data that came from the interviews did support the findings of the survey, but the data in itself wasn't really, there wasn't enough of it. I could have probably done with 30 interviews rather than 3, but That was a learning approach. And from the survey and the interviews, there was the triangulation of data. So from the triangulation of data, the answer to the research question was that mindfulness did support within the online environments, and that those with a mindfulness-based practice actually went around using technology in a different way to those without a practice. Okay, so my findings. So here we have two circles, and this talks about really the interaction with technology from both groups. So the green is those with who don't have a mindfulness practice, and the blue is those that do have a mindfulness practice. So here we can notice that there was some kind of correlations. Both groups talked about the necessity to use mindfulness for work. Sorry, not mindfulness, technology for work. They both spoke about the concept of it supporting their communication with others. And they both spoke about the idea of entertainment. So from an entertainment point of view, it was quite interesting because practitioners spoke about watching videos to support their practice. So perhaps watching a mindfulness association video in the evening or following one of the guided meditations that were online. Whereas from a non-practitioner point of view, it was more kind of daft cartoon clips and this kind of. So even though there was an entertainment element, it was from a different angle. We could also see that there's a social media presence was far higher within the non-mindfulness practicing group to the mindfulness group. And with the social media, there was also a maintaining of an online presence. So the participants were speaking of how they were online, how they kept their social media platforms going. And that wasn't something that was discussed by the mindfulness group, though both groups did say that they had social media, the use and conversation around it was far greater with the non-mindfulness group. That was the same with online shopping. We could see that those with a mindfulness practice didn't really speak about shopping online very much. Those without a practice actually spoke of the question, which was asking them if they saw an advert online for something, would they be tempted to click and buy it? You know, so all this suggestive advertising we see. And it felt from the results like the non-mindfulness grouping were far more likely to go with this persuasive marketing technique. Okay. I think the mindfulness group talked about news more than the non-mindfulness group. And they spoke of it as being a tool just to support throughout life. I think the non-mindfulness group also spoke about the instant information that you can get from the tool of a mindfulness, from the internet, and whereas the mindfulness group didn't speak about that instancy. Okay. So with kind of this concept of everybody's usage, I went on to ask people how they felt that e-safety and policies were in relation to the time they spent online. And it was noted that the non-mindfulness practicing group actually spoke of it in a less positive manner than the mindfulness group. So even though here there's, I suppose, there's no real correlation that can be made apart from there felt like there was a greater understanding of the policies that are out there. That might be something that could be researched further to actually find out whether that was due to the practice and how that came about. So the next question was, can mindfulness support digital technology? And the answer was yes. Even from those that didn't have a practice, they believed that actually having a mindfulness-based practice would be able to support one when they were using digital technology. What was interesting was that actually the non-practicing group said a higher percentage than the practicing group, which you might have thought would be the other way around. But with that in mind, the following question: has your online activity changed with the development of your mindfulness practice? Showed the answer that yes, for 40% of people, it had changed. And there was a maybe, which say 31%, and for 29%, no, they thought it hadn't changed. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had put a maybe in a lot of my questions, and I wonder if that was the right decision to make. I think maybe is sometimes when you're doing a survey, it's a safe kind of response. But when you're actually looking at it from a research perspective, I wondered whether having that maybe kind of gave me a grey area where I actually couldn't, especially as it was so large in this case, give a clear answer. So the conclusion to my research was that having a mindfulness-based practice did support you when you were online. And it seemed to keep people away from using social media as much, suggestive kind of purchasing. There was also the element of escapism. So the individuals were asked whether they found that technology was an escapist tool for them. And the non-practitioners said that it was an escapist tool, whereas the mindfulness practitioners didn't see it in the same way. Addiction was also our question that was asked. Again, the non-practicing participants said that they felt that they weren't kind of aware of the addiction, whereas the mindfulness practitioners said either a strong yes or no, we're addicted to technology. So there was a stronger connection with the actual, I suppose, lived experience of the use of technology from the practitioner. So what I think would be interesting, because I actually carried out this research I handed in my dissertation in 2019, in the December, and I graduated in the June of 2020, so just before COVID. With COVID, a lot more people started working from home, they started shopping online. It would be interesting to do this again post-COVID and actually see whether just by lifestyle kind of changes and situations outside of our control, the answers to these questions had changed. Though the actual research led me on to doing a PhD, which was looking deeper into the role of mindfulness practitioners online. Because obviously this master's was about the comparison of your practitioner and your non-practitioner to actually see the correlation and the comparison of both groups' usage. So this kind of, after getting a kind of a positive result, I suppose, that actually, yes, it did feel like the practitioners were having a healthier experience online. That kind of took me to the next step of actually exploring why, how, and what practices bring this about. So yeah, that's all my findings. So thank you very much for listening. And again, if you've got any questions, my email address is on here. So thank you.